other person could have, let's say, a red mark or a scratch. Good afternoon. This is David Kohlmeyer, the Problem Solver. How are you today? Thanks for joining us. The Problem Solvers, every single week, we have amazing people, guests that are on the show. We're trying to solve problems and talk about certain issues that are going on in Las Vegas and throughout the United States of America. So again, I'm David Kohlmeyer, retired police officer of 17 years. I was a New York City police officer. I was also a police officer in Henderson, Nevada. And basically, I've been retired for the last 6 years trying to help people solve problems, bring other problem solvers on the show, and try to help people pay it forward. So again, welcome to the show. Today, I have an amazing guest to my left, Randy Sutton. And Randy Sutton basically was a police officer for, again, it was 34 years?
34 years.
34 years. That's amazing. He's very well known within the Las Vegas community. We met several times. This is the first time that we're sitting down to have the podcast show of the Problem Solver, and it'll be a better way for us to learn about each other. But 34 years with Metro for how many years?
24.
24 years. So again, thank you for joining the show.
Oh, my pleasure.
So Randy, I figured this was great because I never sat down and really we went to like a local restaurant and we always go to the same coffee pub place. So I think it's a great time to get you on the show to talk a little bit more about yourself and the life, because you've done so much and you've done great things in the community and people just know you. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from originally.
Sure. So I spent my first 10 years as a police officer in my hometown, which was Princeton, New Jersey. And it was a nice, quiet town, a population of about 15,000 people. I think we had 30 cops. And quite honestly, I got bored and I wanted more action. So I researched different police departments and I chose Las Vegas Metro. I came out here in 1986, joined the department, spent 24 years retiring as a field lieutenant. And my retirement was not something that I had planned. I wound up having a stroke in my police car, and that's what ended my career, almost ended my life. And what took place after that had a profound effect on the future and to this very day.
Got it. So you basically been around 34 years. You've done a lot in general, which we'll talk about in a second. And, it seems that, we always talk about, being a police officer and the stress and PTSD, and we bring it home in general that it has affected you. I mean, 34 years is a long time. Most police officers serve, 20 years, right?
Yeah, if they're smart.
Yeah. So 20, most cops in general, like when I started, again, I was 22 in New York City, and the goal was to be 44 and retired and technically be on some island somewhere, getting a police pension. But 34 years, I mean, technically you've gone 14 years above the average guy in general. So, again, it's definitely a lot of time. So, basically, you grew up in New Jersey?
Grew up in New Jersey. Spent my first 10 years as a cop there. And once I came here to Nevada, I never looked back. It was the best decision I ever made. But that's because I was afforded a lot of different opportunities here. First of all, to be a cop here was the best place in the world to ever be a cop. There's no place like Vegas. And the experience level that you get here is like nowhere else. So the working on the department, Metro was a phenomenal place to work. Of course, I had my ups and downs. I had some experiences that continue to reverberate through my life. So that goes along with the badge. But I did a few other things along the way. I've written 4 books. I've been in a number of movies. I was in the movie Casino. I was one of the most featured officers on the television show Cops. And all of those things that enter your life become a part of you. And also, they drive your future. And so many of the experiences that I had as I was a police officer here had a profound effect on my life and set me on the path that I am now. And, we all evolve as human beings. We all evolve as police officers. And I think that's one of the topics that I love to talk about is personal evolvement.
Great. And so when you started in New Jersey, you had to go through a police academy in New Jersey?
I did. In fact, it was a very tough academy. It was the New Jersey State Police Academy, and that was a residential academy. So I was the youngest cop in the state of New Jersey at the time. I was 19.
Wow.
And when I look back on some of the decisions that I made as a 19-year-old cop, I shudder. I really do. Some of the decisions. For a very brief window, you could become a cop. They later realized that was way too young. But they had just changed the age of majority from 21 to 18, so you could drink and you could vote. But one thing you couldn't do, you couldn't buy ammunition. Mm-hmm. You had to be 21. So here I am getting ready to go into the New Jersey State Police Academy, and I had to have my mom buy my bullets for me.
Interesting. So 19, because most places are going to be like 22. I was 21. I had to wait to get into NYPD at 22. So 19, no, you're definitely young. You know, that's what people say, like the experience of a new officer. What kind of experience does that have to go into people's homes and tell them what to do and how to live their lives with kids?
And it's true. It's true.
So, so you did 10 years in New Jersey. Then you came out here. Did you have to go through another police academy?
I sure did. I had to start all over. Went through the academy again. And at first, I knew they told me, straight up I was going to have to go through the academy. But now, instead of being the youngest guy, I'm one of the older guys in the class. And it was a very, very challenging academy.
So you were 29?
I was 30.
30 when you came? Okay.
Yeah. And it was physically challenging. And I actually preferred the residential academy because you're there and you can just concentrate and study.
You mean that you live there?
You live there. In New Jersey, you actually lived at the academy.
I know the Jersey State Troopers did the too.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or state troopers, a lot of times they do that. So with here, you didn't live there. With Metro, it was just basically you live.
Right. You live in an apartment and then you go to the academy.
So you enjoyed it more, basically, the experience.
I thought it was more beneficial because you don't.
You're immersed into it.
Exactly.
It's interesting. Most people, I laugh because I say I've been through an East Coast academy and a West Coast academy, which is different.
Very much so.
Especially out here where you're allowed to have guns. I remember when someone had a gun, when I went to the academy here in Vegas, someone had a gun. I was like, gun, but out here it's like, what are you talking about?
Everybody's got a gun.
He's got a blue card. He's allowed to have the gun. Like, let him go, like, what are you talking about? Where back east, right, you couldn't have a gun, a lot more restrictions, not the Wild West.
Right.
So you go through another academy. It's interesting. You were 30 when you went through the Metro Academy because I was 22 in NYPD, and then I was 26 years old basically when I came through the academy in Nevada? What is it? Southern Nevada
Southern
Regional
Nevada, yeah.
Academy. SNLEA was the academy, and I was 26 at the time. And the funny thing about it is, how it is, like with certain cops, like some cops are like amazing, like with PT and physical training, and some cops are amazing at shooting, and some cops are like great at talking to people. But the truth is, I always say you have to be above average in all these things because a lot of people failed out. So
Sure.
I remember, like even in New York City, there was a guy that was like extremely fit. I've always could have lost probably 20 pounds, and I remember like he was really fit, but somehow he was under a lot of stress, and he failed out. He didn't basically make it out. So. You have to be above average, would you agree, in all aspects? You can't just be an amazing shot. How many times are you shooting your gun in the real world of policing? I mean, it could be rare. It could be once in 20 years.
Oh, yeah. If you don't have all the skills, you're not going to make it. You don't have to shine in any of them, but you have to be adequate in all of them.
Correct. Because I remember people were failing out here, even in Henderson. One guy, he just couldn't shoot at all, but and like I always laugh because we are alpha males being police officers, and basically we're all a little bit cocky sometimes. Personally, I didn't think I was cocky, but you want to get through the academy. It's with me. I was fortunate; I had a year leave of absence. I could have went back to New York City and picked up.
See,
You couldn't?
I burnt my bridges. It was sink or swim. Yeah.
So I had a year leave of absence. If I had to go back, and fortunately, I remember being after the 1 year. I was like, I remember driving on Gibson and. Gibson in the 215, I was all excited, I was passing, I was like, I'm staying, I made it, and I always wanted to work for a, police department that was paying more money and, better, in general in New York City, as back east, a little bit different. You probably were in a nicer suburban area in New Jersey, so things are a little bit different in general. Tell me about cops. How many, I know we have a clip we'll roll in a minute, but tell me, how did you get to be that, how many years on were you when you got to be on cops? And how'd you get on there? Like, because not everybody would be selected for that.
It was very interesting. The first year I was on 3 different years.
Okay.
89, 94, 96. And 89 was only the second year that Cops was a show.
Okay.
So I had been on about 2.5, 3 years. And the way they chose who they were going to ride with is the director or the producer would ask the sergeants who gets in the shit. They wanted somebody that was going to be active, and so the sergeant suggested that they ride with me. And what they did was, before they chose me, they sent just a producer out with me with a handheld camera to see how you act, or if you act up in front of the camera. And if you don't, then, and you know, they like the way you look on camera, then they choose you to be the subject officer. And it especially in those days, it was true reality. It was the first reality show. Mm-hmm. And all they did was throw a camera guy in the front seat, sound guy in the back seat, and whatever you got into, you got into. And I just happened to get into a lot of good stuff.
Now, I know we're going to show a clip in a second, but you know what's interesting? I just thought about it because you're an East Coast guy. Now, they must have liked you because you had for TV, people, they like East Coast people. Co-workers may be a little bit different of the East Coast because I don't know East Coast and West Coast. I mean, I had a little bit of, my accent from New York. I was made fun of, in general.
Yeah, me
but
too.
I think for TV, they like it in general because we're very like TV. We're very charismatic for TV in general. What's your thoughts?
I don't know about that. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Agree with that?
I think it's just they got they rode with a number of people, and if they liked what they saw, they rode with you. And if you got something, you got something. A lot of guys rode
fishing.
and they rode for weeks and never got a damn thing.
Got it.
It's the luck of the draw, really.
The reason why I mentioned that is because I was recently part of a sizzle reel for a TV show, and there was different lawyers and myself as like a host or like an investigator behind the scenes, and they were like, we don't like any of these people. We like him. He's very TV, like myself. And
yeah.
I think it's the East Coast, just the mannerism and stuff.
It could be. I'm sure there's something to that.
And the clip that we're going to show, I think it's very East Coast, but I don't know. But anyway, Travis, if you don't mind rolling the clip of the cops with Randy.
Acknowledge. Baker 34 and David 34, did you copy?
I want to see your hands, mister. Show me your hands. Show me your hands. On top of your head. On top of your head. Put your hands on top of your head. Now, keep your hands on top of your head. Step out this way. Hands on the car.
What did I do?
Put your hands on the car. Step out this way. This way. Hands on the car.
How long were you a cop right now
Hands on the car.
with East
3
Coast?
years or 13 years.
13
total.
with Jersey.
You got a gun? Put your hands on the car.
Okay. It's in my left-hand side, inside my jacket.
I want you on your knees with your hands on top of your head. On top of your head. Do not move.
This is what I get for
Control 3, Baker. I have the subject at gunpoint in the store parking lot.
Baker 34, your ETA.
It's inside.
Do not move.
It's right there.
Do you remember it like it was yesterday?
Yep, I do.
You remember the location this is, or?
I do.
Hands behind your back.
Nellis Boulevard.
Stand up. On my car.
That's fine.
Control 3, Baker. Suspect in custody. Code 4.
What was it, robbery or?
It was a man with a gun call, and he was laying down in the car. I didn't see him.
No.
He was laying inside the car.
Yeah.
Okay. Once you're on, stay right there. Come on over here, girl. By my car. Just make sure you got nothing.
You think it was more dangerous in Vegas back then?
No, I think it's always been dangerous in Vegas.
I don't know if it's loaded or not.
Keep your face down there.
Yes, sir.
Information only about 414 beer skip at Baker 2, 6711.
Radio ready?
Land booth.
Had this, What? What's your problem?
So how many total?
The inside.
How many total? What do you call it? Episodes were you on?
No, not real good.
That was a total of 30. Let's see, 14 episodes.
14 episodes.
14 episodes that were actually aired,
Where did you get the gun?
It turned out that
What's your
the
friend's name?
last year that I was on, the sheriff at the time didn't like the fact that I was on so many shows.
What's your friend's
so
name?
he had him stop some.
Some of the shows. All right, Travis, we'll get with the clip. Thank you. So you on? I'm sorry. One time. 14
episodes.
14 episodes. Okay. And so, were you on any other shows during this time? That was it.
Well, actually, I was in some movies during this time as well.
Okay.
In fact,
During the same time.
what happened was a casting director called me and said there is a film going to be shot in Vegas, and the director is looking for realism in the part of a police officer. Would you come down and do an audition? And hey, I'm always up for a new adventure, right? So I walk into the suite at the old Riviera Hotel, and who's standing there but Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro. And my audition consisted of me telling them war stories about being a Vegas cop. And that was it. You got the part.
Really. So casting agent locally in Vegas. Did they watch Cops and that's how they knew about
Yes.
you? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So Cops basically led you to the movie called The Casino.
Right, and that's how I got in the Screen Actors Guild, and I've been doing movies and TV ever since.
So Casino was the start. So you mentioned before that the sheriff didn't like the fact that you were doing so much
Right.
of the show of
Yeah, he in fact,
Cops?
I was very friendly with the producer at the time, and he told me a very funny story about having a meeting with the then sheriff, who said, "Are we allowed to curse on this?"
Yeah, absolutely.
He says, "This isn't the fucking Randy Sutton show." So
Were they jealous that you were just getting too much attention?
yeah,
That happens in the police department.
yeah, it does.
All right, so you basically casting. I think we have the clip of you basically in Casino. If we could warm that up, just to see that clip.
All the time anymore. I'm going to the FBI. I will go to the police. I am not protecting you anymore, you fuck. He won't let me.
Mr. Rothstein, I'm sorry. We get some complaints about the noise.
I'm just trying to get in my house. He won't let me go in my house.
I'm sorry, Randy. I'm not going to let her in. I'm not going to let her in the way she's
Not
behaving.
gonna let me in.
Who knows what you're going to do in there?
What do you mean? What am I gonna do? I've been in the same clothes for 2 days. I want to get a few of my things. Big deal.
Mr. Rothstein, if we just let her in the house and get a few of her things, that way she'll get out of here. So just half her house
I'm afraid
anyway.
to let her in the house.
Oh, you are.
Let her get a few of her things.
Let me in the house.
Hey.
Please.
Fuck off. You ought to be afraid the way you fucking treat me.
Mr. Rothstein, it'll make it a lot easier on everybody.
If we let her get a few of her things, we'll be out of your hair.
If she calms down, I will let her in the
I
house.
am calm.
If she calms down, I will let her in the house for 5 minutes. If you gentlemen will escort her out if she happens to not want to leave, because I don't.
Can I go in?
That's not
Can I go in?
Jeff, would you go over there?
Yes, fine.
Absolutely.
Fine. Fuck you.
I actually think this is very realistic to a lot of
It
things out
was
there.
very realistic. Yeah.
How long did it take to film this part? Was it just a day or two?
Oh no, this was 3 weeks.
3 weeks just to film that.
3 weeks just to film that.
Okay, that was cool. So a lot of people knew that you were in the movie and got some. It was definitely a great movie to be a part of.
Oh,
right?
if you're going to be in a movie for a first role, to be in a and then do a scene with De Niro and Sharon Stone, and by the way, that was all ad libbed.
Oh, really? They just said go with the flow.
Well, that's why it took 3 weeks, because we actually did this scene a lot of times, and so sometimes it was with the lines that I was given, and other times we ad libbed, and and Martin Scorsese liked the ad libbed part.
Interesting. Yeah, I've been doing it for so long. I mean, it probably sounds better, but it's very realistic. I mean, if it's the same situation like most cops probably throughout the U.S. just trying to basically do more of a caretaking role of just getting property so they could leave and stuff like that. We've done hundreds of them. What besides this movie, other movies? Anything else?
Yeah, I did Miss Congeniality Part 2 with Sandra Bullock. I had a pretty fun role in a movie with it was what was her name? Salma Hayek, and my part was delivering her baby on the bridge at Hoover Dam. So I can legitimately say I was between Salma Hayek's legs for 3 days.
On the Hoover Dam one?
On the
On
Hoover
border?
Dam. Yeah, it was called Fools Rush In.
Yeah. I gotta watch it again. So you were the officer that was doing the.
I played a Hoover Dam cop.
Okay. It's been a while. Maybe I did see it in general. And then I know that you have the books here. I have your books here. Basically, we have True Blue, Police Stories, by those who have lived them, Sergeant Randy Sutton. And we also have the other book, basically, which is A Cop's Life, the stories from behind the badge. So tell me about your books and how long did it take to write them and stuff. These are great books.
Well, just like my acting career, which I never anticipated was going to happen, my writing career also came about not from a purposeful stance. What happened was I had a life-changing incident when I was a young officer. In fact, it was about 1989, about the same time that I was on this show. And that life-changing event was saving the life of a 1-month-old baby who had been shot in the face in a drive-by. And it impacted me so much that night I went home and took out a pad and a pen and wrote the story. Not because I was going to do anything with it, but I needed to do it for myself. So I wrote the story and I stuck it in a drawer where it sat for several years, in fact, until 2001. And then the World Trade Center was attacked. And I was very frustrated that I couldn't help those officers. It was the deadliest day in law enforcement history. 72 Port Authority and New York City police officers died, as you're well aware. And I was really frustrated because I couldn't do anything to help. And so while all this was happening, I came upon the idea. I thought about that story that was in that drawer, and I thought about the stories of all those officers. And I knew that every cop has a story that is really impactful. So I decided I was going to put together a book with stories from cops that were like the one that I did. And I was going to donate all the royalties to the Widows and Orphans Fund for the cops who were killed. And that's exactly what I did. I put together that first book, which was True Blue, Police Stories by Those Who Have Lived Them, and donated every penny of the royalties to the fund for those Port Authority officers and NYPD officers.
So this was what, 2000?
I think it came out in about 2002, 2003.
Okay.
About that time. And one of that same story that I just told you about, the editor-in-chief at St. Martin's Press liked that story so much and liked my writing that he asked me to write my own stories. Mm-hmm. And that's the second book, A Cop's Life. And those are all my own stories from my career.
Amazing. A lot of people said I should do that too and stuff like that. I just, it takes time to put a book together.
That's a year of hard labor. And then, of course, when you're talking about, dredging up those memories, that's a tough book to read. I'll tell you right now, A Cop's Life is a difficult book to read because it's dark. It's dark. Those stories that I dredged up were not pleasant stories. Many of them. I mean, they were harsh, and that's the reality of policing.
The heroic story that you involved in, I thought I always saw you on TV where it was a fire, but it was the baby. I know later on in life that you met the young lady. That was the same story?
Well, there was two stories. There was a fire.
Tell us about that one.
Well, that was that was a dumbass move on my part. I was on patrol and I see a plume of smoke in a neighborhood, and it was a house on fire. And as I radioed for for the fire department to get there, a neighbor comes running out and said, "There's a woman and her baby in the house." And so what do I do? What am I going to do? I can't just ignore it. And I kicked in the front door, and the fire was in the back of the house. So I figured, and I'm yelling for, "Are you here? Are you here?" And I'm doing, frantically searching for this baby and her mother. And I'm yelling, "Are you here? Are you here?" And I ran up the stairs, checking the bedrooms, and I found an empty, crib. And by the time I ran, and believe me, this is happening very quickly, the fire had come up behind me and trapped me. And it was one of the most frightening moments of my life. I was completely
surrounded,
disoriented. The smoke was so bad I literally could not see 6 inches in front of me. And I'm crawling on the floor trying to look for a way to escape, and I'm coughing and I'm inhaling the smoke, and I saw what I thought was a light, and I literally ran through a plate glass window and saved my life. But there was nobody in the house.
There's nobody inside the house.
There was nobody inside the house. And I remember that trip in that ambulance, the fire department, and the fireman says, "Hey, dumbass, I just want you to know you did more damage to your lungs in one afternoon than I'll do my entire career."
So the one with the girl that you met later in life, that's the one that was the...
That was the one who was shot in the face. Right. She was. It was a startling story. Mom, dad, and 1 month old on the way to the store. Just nice people innocent people on Sahara and Las Vegas Boulevard area. And a car full of gangbangers pulls up alongside of him. We found out later it was a gang initiation. And just opened fire on the car for no reason whatsoever. And riddled the car with bullets, missed the parents, but hit the baby in the face. And I was on patrol, and I just happened to see, I came upon the scene not being dispatched. I just saw a car up on the side of the road and people running around screaming. So I have no idea what it is. And I pulled up, I requested a backup. And as I get out of the car, it's bedlam. And so then I hear somebody scream, "Oh my God, the baby's been shot." And I look down, and there in a little toddler seat is this little tiny baby who's bleeding really badly from the face. And another patrol unit got there. I have no idea if the shooter's there. You know what a scene like this is, and you're trying to figure things out. You got the parents who are, beside themselves. I got the baby. And I checked the baby, and she's not breathing. And
where was the bullet? Where was
the bullet hit? Remember, her face was this big, so the bullet hit her in the face, and a bunch of tissue and stuff went down into her throat and choked her. Mm-hmm. So first patrol car got there. I said, "We can't wait for the ambulance." So I was able to scoop out all that tissue and stuff, and give her mouth to mouth or mouth to face resuscitation and bring her back. And because I was there quite literally, within a minute of it happening, the baby didn't have any brain damage. And she's a happy, healthy woman.
And you met her many years later, right? How many
I stayed in touch with the family. I'm like her godfather. I stayed in touch with her family the whole time.
So how many years has that been?
That's been 20 years.
When's the last time you spoke with her? You've seen her?
I went to lunch with her 3 weeks ago.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That story lives with you forever, these traumatic experiences.
Absolutely.
And just to share for some of the listeners and viewers, and basically, when a police officer basically comes to a scene that you're not called, they're not dispatched to, you don't know what's going on. It's different if you show up to a scene, they're like, "Oh, there's a, gunshot, there's a victim," and when you pull up and there's basically mayhem taking place, people running around, you don't know your own safety, right? You don't know if there's a bad guy or a good guy, what's going on, someone's bleeding. You have to basically kind of control the scene at the same time, basically render aid to a child or to somebody. So I mean, it's people think policing is basically very easy, in general.
There's nothing easy about policing, whether you're in a big city or you're a small town. Even when I was a Princeton cop, I make fun of it because I was a small town cop, but I had some things take place there that are in this book, A Cop's Life, because they were so dramatic. And one thing if you're going to be a cop, you're going to face danger. You're going to face adversity. You're going to face life-threatening situations at some time or another. It's just it may not happen as frequently in a smaller community, but it's sure as hell going to happen one time or another, and you better be prepared for it.
So we got we talked about the books. We talked about you being on the show. You've been on some different movies in general like that. How many different sheriffs did you work for locally in Las Vegas?
I think I worked for 4.
Got it. Were any of them, I was going to say, pro Randy Sutton more than...
Oh, yeah.
Some were more pro Randy Sutton, like doing these things? Because a lot of police agencies don't want you to get that exposure, or like even where I worked in Henderson, for what my understanding was, they didn't want cops coming to town because, like, you never know, right? Like a liability, or it makes us look bad sometimes. I mean, I think it's great stuff that you have out there. Now I think, did they totally ban cops? Remember that?
No,
now to this day.
They're still riding with them.
They're still doing it?
Yeah.
Because I thought they wanted the whole thing that was like, the whole defunding of the police.
Well, they stopped filming for a while, but I think they're coming back.
They're back. Because it's been going on for, over 30 years now?
Well, I think 1988 was the first year.
So tell me what your thoughts are. So you've been here a long time. So you started when you were a cop here at 19. Is it
No, I started as a cop when I was 19. I started here when I was 30,
so 1986?
1986.
So tell me what your thoughts are in regards to crime and the amount of people here. So in 1986, I came here in 2002. So do you feel things, there was less people back in 86. Do you feel in regards to crime that there's more? Is it more dangerous now than it was back then? What's your thoughts about in regards to crime since you've been doing this a long time? And
It was, when I got here, there was 500,000 residents. And this town was entirely different. I loved this town then. It was big enough that you could find whatever you wanted to find here and get into whatever you wanted to get into. But it was small enough that it was a community. And everybody knew everybody else here. It was when I say that, I mean the casinos were owned by people, not corporations. There was a rich history here that was still, 86 was the end of the mob era, but there was still lots of stories here, and there were still lots of people here that were very colorful. Let me put it that way.
influential?
And so it was a fun place to be, not just because the policing was fun, because believe me, we were busy as hell. They're busy as hell now. We were busy as hell then. And there was lots of activity. This was a dangerous town, and it still is. It's dangerous for the officers.
What makes it so dangerous? Is it because it's the Wild West, or?
We have everything here. You have a lot of gang members here, tons of gang members. You have a large narcotics issue here. You have we don't have organized crime per se here anymore, but you have everything that's in an urban area, and as well as one of the things that freaked me out when I got here was when I was a Princeton cop, I had 1.5 miles square. That was it. That was my town. Here, it's 7,000 square miles that you have, and there's the metro area, but then there was Laughlin, there was Mount Charleston. When I first got here, was Mesquite was still part of the sheriff's department. So we had all these outside areas that we were also policing. And I thought that was fascinating, but Clark County is bigger than the whole state of New Jersey. So it's hard for a lot of people to conceive of that the area-wise is massive. But this is and was a very challenging place to be a police officer. You got crazy people that come here. You have folks that come here that do stuff that they would never do at home. You got alcohol-infused everything. You have people that come here to kill themselves and don't care if they take somebody with them. You get people that come here and are either going to commit crimes or they're going to be victims of crimes because of their actions.
It's interesting you say people are going to be committing crimes or victim of crimes.
Yeah, and that's people come here and they drink to excess, or they think everything in the world is legal here. They think that prostitution is legal.
It's not?
And it sure isn't.
Everyone thinks that.
You would. Why wouldn't you think that when the first billboard you see is girls direct to your room? Mm-hmm. So
that's just for conversation.
It's the real deal.
They just want to talk to you.
But it's interesting.
The marketing.
I worked Vice for a short period of time here, and I didn't really get much job satisfaction from that. But it was one of the funniest jobs I ever had, because what happens in that world is some of the best stories you could ever come up with as a cop. But people, tourists that come here, many of them think that it is legal, and so they wander into an area where they think that there's some regulation, and there used to be. That when I first got here, escorts were licensed. They had to have a sheriff's card.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that changed when a court case came out that now classified them as entertainers and gave them free speech. And that's why there's no more escorts. They are now entertainers, and that's how they get away with putting those billboards up. It's one of the best. It's one of the best rackets ever because it's legal for the owners. Here's the way it works. You want to know how it works? Because it's. I wish I thought of it. It's absolutely brilliant. So before, when they were escorts, somebody would call. By that time, they would go into the yellow pages, and there were almost as many hookers as there was lawyers. Almost as many. Actually, they're about equal. and some were both. And some were probably. And so you would call up. Say you wanted an albino hooker. You'd look under albinos are us, and you'd call up and say, "Can you send me an albino hooker?" And they would say, "Sure." And they would call up one of their girls, and she would go to your room, and she would work a deal out with you, whatever sex it was, and then she'd give part of that money to the service. Well, that's illegal. That's pimping, right? And so the Vice would bust out some of these escort service owners if they could catch them actually taking the money, right? Okay, so now fast forward. They become entertainers where they're no longer escorts. You come into town from Dubuque and you want that albino hooker, so now you look it up on the internet and you call whatever number it is, and the service, the entertainment service, bangs your credit card for $250, $300 right off for the entertainment. Well, then they send the girl, whatever the girl gets, that's between you and her. So there's no pimping. So it's clean money. There's nothing illegal about it. It's the most brilliant scheme ever. In fact, I worked actually one of the last organized crime attempts to infiltrate and take over that market. It was actually pretty fun.
So they get paid a service fee, and then when the entertainer gets there, they negotiate a fee for entertainment, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it's not. Well, technically,
now
they're not supposed to be doing sexual services,
right? So it's on them
if they get.
So the girl or whatever it is these days, they are committing a crime if they solicit a sexual act for money.
Got it.
So, but they can't bring that back to the service. So that's
why they
why
give the money back. So that's why they get the fee up front. Interesting. I didn't know the whole story with that. I will share with you. There was one time. This is 15 years ago. They came to town. A friend of a friend came to town for a bachelor party, and the same thing had took place in a hotel. And somehow the girl must have said, "Hey, give me $300," and she winds up taking the money and like leaving. And I remember some of the guys there were like, "Don't let her leave," or something like that. Like it started going to like kidnapping, like they basically, and that's what happens where they're trying to like take money and play these games.
Oh, listen, that's a dangerous job.
And I heard these guys say like keep her here, this is like kidnapping now. Like I gotta get out of here. Like these people, they're upset they're losing their money.
And it happens. The police get called to those.
Like we paid them money. We gave them money for services. Like
right.
So I remember that story. It was someone I knew, their friend. I was like, it's time for me to leave. This is not a place where I need to be. All right. So bottom line is crime. Here's a good question for you. So in Henderson, when I was a cop, it's voted like the safest city in the United States of America, and they go by the UCR data, where basically robbery, rape, and murder, and all those major things.
Right.
Why, in your eyes, is Henderson safer now? I think crime takes place, I would say, it doesn't discriminate how many square feet your home is, if it's a gated community or not. Like, no matter what, crime does exist anywhere in the United States of America. But they always say in Henderson, basically, it's a safer place, right? And fine. So maybe the UCR data, because it's a suburban community, is much better, but the same theft of a car, or, people breaking into cars or other things. Why do you think Henderson, Summerlin gets kind of, I guess, scooped into the whole Las Vegas metro area, and Summerlin is not a city, it's a master plan community. Why do you think Henderson is the UCR data? Why is it safer? It's just a smaller suburban community because they keep year after year.
No, it's because it's a more affluent community. Where there is affluence, there is less street crime. And like if you were to take Summerlin and just make it all by its own lonesome, it would probably have a very similar crime demographic to Henderson. Now, then if you take North Las Vegas, because it's lower socioeconomically, it is going to be a higher crime rate. So this is just the realities of the world here.
I guess it's also just of the town because it's a separate. When I came to Vegas originally, I said, "Is there like a suburb community here?" And someone said Henderson. I said, "What's Henderson?" You know, I thought it was like it's like saying Summerlin, but the Henderson actually was a city. So people
Right.
say Summerlin, or people would say, "Oh, you should go to Green Valley." When Green Valley is just a master plan community, it's not a city.
Right.
But young kids here today, if people ask them, "What city you live in?" They'll say Green Valley.
Oh, absolutely.
They
Same
think-
thing with Summerlin.
Yeah.
And it is not. But it's just the the way things are referred
So
to.
it's interesting in regards to that. So what are your thoughts today? Basically, being a cop today, I'll share a quick story. Basically, before I was retiring, I did community policing for the last 6 years, and I went back to patrol. And I was basically, you get tired of policing in some regards because it gets old. Same situation. You feel I always say that when you don't feel like you're dressing up as Superman and you feel good about it, things just kind of change over time. And I think for over 17 years, I just felt that it was just getting old and it was the same situation. And then I had I was able to medically retire because of a stomach issue that I had. But I guess my question is in regards to policing today, I had the camera on the front of my car and I had a little beeper device for audio. And you always had to make sure the audio device was on and so on. And then now years later, in Henderson, it's, camera on their shirt, and with Metro, it's on their shoulder. Some police officers really feel, hey, it's no big deal. It's great if someone makes an internal affairs complaint, that go to the camera, But some officers felt like you can't do your job anymore. So I personally think the cameras are great for people in the community and citizens, but I think that it makes it difficult for doing your job. And as a police officer, but a lot of people feel like, why would it be making it more difficult, right? If you're not doing anything wrong, if you're following policies and procedures. I don't think you had cameras for any of the time that you were.
No.
So what's your thoughts about, first of all, cameras in general? I mean, just in general, being a cop today. Imagine if you were a cop I know times were different back then, but if you were a cop today and you had a camera on you all the time on your shoulder, what are your thoughts about that?
I to this day, I am a commentator on a number of news shows, national news shows about law enforcement topics. So this is not a new topic for me. This is something I speak about nationally. From a personal point of view, we used to call the cameras and the dash cams the punk in the trunk, because I felt offended that I was going to have to be photographed, that what I was going to do was going to be videoed. But officers today don't feel that way for the most part, because there's been a sea change of
Attitude change about it.
and it's a totally different environment now. So guys are growing up in the new world of everything is videoed, so they're not really intimidated by this. Now, what I have seen is that those body-worn cameras and dash cams have saved a lot of cops' asses over the years, a lot of them, to the point where I'm a believer in them simply because these days it's a necessity. There are so many times when people have tried to set up a cop or made false allegations that could literally put a police officer in prison, and then when you look at the body-worn camera or the dash cam, they are exonerated because of it. Now, let's talk about what it's like for a cop to be under surveillance his entire work life. Okay, nobody likes that. It's uncomfortable. And then, of course, depending on the administration that you work for, there's a huge distrust between the line officer and their administration, and sometimes that is absolutely called for. Imagine if you're a police officer and everything that you do is videotaped, and your supervisor, if he doesn't like you, can go through your 8 hours of videotape and find something in there, because nobody, not one human being on the face of the planet, can
so
go
perfect.
by every policy of a police department every single day. It can't happen. Remember, I don't know about you, but my policy manual is about 5,000 pages long. Looked like War and Peace, and
To follow by the T is almost impossible. Every single day.
it absolutely is. So, depending on who you work for and depending on your department, and it's just unfortunate. It's unfortunate now that we live in a time where these officers are under such incredible stress, not just from the public, but from
Administration.
their administrations and the political environment. Metro is down 57% in recruitment, and Metro hasn't had a lot of the
Major
unrest and major problems that many other cities have had.
Is that what it is? The 57%?
Yeah, it was
Because they can't find people to become cops these days because of what's
correct.
going on.
Correct.
You know, I used to say the same thing with administration, and I don't want to be like, I'm not saying I'm a perfect person in general, and every single day, right? People are different. Are they giving discretion or arresting people? There's a lot of different issues. But I do agree. I used to say that, and nothing against administration of anywhere, I mean, because they have a job to do, but I used to say that it was easy to deal with a bad guy with the gun. You know, you could shoot him or you could say something to him or, you know, or a verbal stun or curse at him to basically stop him from committing a crime or hurting you. But when you dealt with administration, and there are certain supervisors that basically don't like certain officers, and they can, you know, look and be very, you know, picky in regards to what you do during the day, and that does affect officers. And I'm sure we both have stories of different officers that we know of in general, and I've been through different things as well where I could say, like, I was victimized by administration as well. And again, no one's perfect in general, and but it's just not easy being a cop today in general. And personally, I've been retired for 6 years. You know, I still feel like I'm doing policing in some regards because I'm helping a lot of people through the Problem Solver Show. Basically, I work with different law firms, the Defenders and Richard Harris, and basically trying to help people prevent recidivism and working with different homeless outreach programs, Hope for Prisoners, Novum U, Nevada Cure, you know, any of these programs to prevent basically crime, because I don't want my family to be victimized in the future, you know, with crime, and I want to prevent drug usage and so on. In regards, I want to talk about the new stuff that you got going on, Wounded Blue and your peer support program. Tell us about Wounded Blue. What exactly is that? How can myself and other listeners and viewers basically help you with Wounded Blue?
Well, I alluded to this very briefly when I told you I had a stroke in my police car. It ended my career. I couldn't go back to work.
Quick question: when that happened, did they know where you? I didn't know the whole story.
I was on duty.
Okay.
I was in my patrol car. It was 2:30 in the morning on Las Vegas Boulevard on the Strip, and I was the watch commander. And whenever I was watch commander, I would take a patrol officer with me, so that I could get to know my people and they could see that their lieutenant actually knew how to do some police work. So I had this young man with me, never ridden with me before. First time, and we're on patrol 2:30 in the morning, and I literally felt my brain slowing down, and I knew instantly what was happening. So I stopped the car right in front of Bally's Hotel, and I looked at this kid and I said, "Get me medical, I'm having a stroke." And he looked at me like, "Is the lieutenant screwing with me?" you know? And he realized, no, he's not. So he called for help. And I got out of the car to go around to the passenger side in case he needed to get me to the hospital.
You got out of the car.
Yeah.
And you went to the passenger side?
By the time I got out of the car, I was speaking gibberish. And I knew I was speaking gibberish. I knew what I was trying to say, but that's not what was coming out of my mouth. And then I lost the ability to speak, and I lost the ability to move and crumpled to the pavement. And that was my last night as an active duty.
What year is this?
Police officer. This is 2009, November. And I retired. Well, they found out that I had a severe heart condition that I was unaware of. And that's what ended my career. But then something happened that I never expected. And that's that my own department turned its back on me and wouldn't pay my medical bills. They knew they had to. They just didn't do it. And they fought me. They spent tens of thousands of dollars.
Saying it's like a workers' comp? Like,
yeah, exactly.
How they say it wasn't like related?
Well, they just refused to pay it. That's so they knew they had no legal argument. They were just hoping that in the year it was going to take me to fight them, I was going to die, so they wouldn't have to pay it. And it made me realize something. They didn't give a shit about me. I even went to see the sheriff, a guy who I'd served with and was friendly with for all those years. And I said, "Sheriff, how do you treat me like that?" And he said, "Randy, this isn't personal. It's just business." Well, it seemed like pretty personal to me. So I won. Took a year. They had to pay my medical bills and do the right thing. The court forced them to. And then I discovered something. Because I'm so visible in the law enforcement community, from being on Cops, from being an author, from being in the movies, from all of that stuff, cops from around the nation started contacting me with these heartbreaking stories. Randy, I know you don't know me, but I was shot, and my chief never came to visit me in the hospital. They're not paying my medical bills. And I'm not one, not two, but hundreds from around the country. Not because I could do anything for them, but simply because I was visible in the law enforcement community. And I thought, okay, wait a minute. There's got to be a resource for these men and women. And I looked and I found there was no national resource. And every one of these officers said the same thing. I feel abandoned and I feel alone. And so I created the Wounded Blue. And the Wounded Blue is the national assistance and support organization for injured and disabled law enforcement officers. And our motto is never forgotten, never alone. And I have a team of some of the most incredible officers from all over the nation. They've all been shot, stabbed, beaten, run over, screwed up and screwed over. And they've either physically or psychologically, because post-traumatic stress is as real as a bullet. And we work with officers from all over the nation to help problem solve after they have been injured physically or emotionally. And that's what we do. In fact, one of the things that we do is we provide, we have an incredible benefit that we give free of charge to injured officers, and that it's called Code 4 Total Wellness. And this is amazing. They get 24-hour-a-day telemedicine with licensed MDs. They get financial counseling and wellness, because very often, there's a lot, financial issues are a real stressor. But most importantly, we give them CAPER, the Confidential Assistance Program for Emergency Responders. It gives they and their families unlimited visits with licensed psychologists and psychiatrists. And it is completely confidential, has nothing to do with their department. And in fact, a law firm here, Gabe Martinez law firm, has given us money to gift this to officers in the Southern Nevada area. So if any of our listeners right now is a law enforcement officer in Southern Nevada, if you are having issues, I ask you to contact me, because first of all, our organization is a resource for every cop in America. Every cop in America. And here in Southern Nevada, we have a big presence, and this program is free of charge for officers who need it.
So the Code 4 Total Wellness includes basically help with if someone basically is PTSD or anything of being injured in the line of duty.
Well, it's mostly for psychological issues.
Psychological, okay.
Right. And now it helps. We gave this this entire program to an entire small department in Alabama. They had 23 cops. One of their beloved members, a sergeant, was lured into an ambush and murdered. And these officers were really facing some serious trauma. We gifted this program to every one of those officers, every one of them, including the chief, who was traumatized as well. And the chief contacted us several months later, contacted me, and he says, "You have no idea the impact that this program had on my cops." And I said, "Well, I think I do." He says, "No, you don't." He says, "The reason you don't is because you don't know that my cops make $15 an hour. They could never afford to visit a psychologist because of the copays. So this is free. And we've saved, I don't know how many lives. We've touched the lives of more than 9,000 cops in 2 years."
It's amazing. It's amazing work that you're doing. I want to, I know, we have about 10 minutes left, 12 minutes left of the show. I want to get with you in the near future in order to basically see what I could do to basically help to get some other free services or, especially locally in town, since we're local, and then also maybe with fundraising or sponsorship and stuff like that in general to basically help. I was part of the Injured Police Officer Fund for many years, and then I also the PEEP program, basically I think which is very common in Vegas and Henderson. And I think basically, I do agree, we mentioned before the show, that a lot of people that have police officers that have like PTSD or psychological issues, they don't want to really go to the PEEP officer because they basically, even if they're having, issues in their own home, because they're afraid that if the administration finds out or the department finds out that they're going to basically lose their job or
Exactly.
they're going to be pinpointed or other officers going to basically say, stay away from that guy.
Yeah,
So I think it's great.
There is a stigma. There is
Yeah.
a stigma.
So I think it's great because you're providing also a service for officers that basically that don't have to go to the administration or their department if they want to keep it more confidential, especially with small departments. Like it's too easy to know, like, oh, he met with the PEEP officer. Why is he
Of course. Of course.
So I think it's great that what you're doing in general, and I applaud you for all the work. And you've been through a lot as well, so I think it's great in general. Tell us about the upcoming training program that you have coming on October 30th.
Well, our organization, we're fairly new. We've only been operational for a little over 2 years.
Okay.
And we have what we call our SEAL approach: support, education, assistance, and legislation, to try and look at this problem, which is national, and try and combat it through using all of these strategies. And under the education part, we are holding our first, it's called the Law Enforcement Survival Summit. And this is going to be an amazing training experience for officers from all over the country. And it encompasses every aspect about surviving a law enforcement career: physical and tactical, emotional survival, legal survival, family, relationship survival. We've got some of the most amazing speakers in the country coming to this. And we were so incredibly fortunate. A construction company here in Vegas, Martin Harris Construction, Guy Martin and I met, and he wanted to know about the Wounded Blue. Turned out that Guy had actually ridden with my squad when I was a sergeant and had been following what I do. And he and I connected, and he said, "Randy, how can my company help? What can my company do to make a lasting impression?" And I told him, I said, if I could, I would create a training program like no other to help cops survive. And he listened to me, and he said, "That's what we'll do." He's the main sponsor for this program, and I'm not even going to tell you how much money he gave me to do it. But he literally put his money where his mouth was and made this possible. So at October 28th, 29th, and 30th, here in Las Vegas at the fabulous Ahern Hotel, and by the way, Don Ahern of the Ahern Hotel made this as affordable as humanly possible and is a major supporter of law enforcement.
Amazing.
And we're gonna hold this here in Vegas, and then we are going to create a training program from it. It will be an annual event, and then so that's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and it ends at noon on Saturday, and then Saturday night we're having a huge event here, the Brothers in Blue Bash, the largest celebration of law enforcement unity and pride in America to support the Wounded Blue. And I've got cops coming literally from 3 different countries that have already signed up to attend this. Food, cocktails, some amazing speakers. I can tell you who it is because I want to surprise everybody, and some tremendous awards. It's going to be an experience like no other, and it's open to the public, people who support law enforcement, as well as active duty, retired, and former law enforcement officers. It's going to be a hell of a party. It's going to have a lot of meaning, and it's going to be the fundraiser for the Wounded Blue. So we've got some phenomenal sponsors. A lot of guys, local Best Mattress just came on as a sponsor. They're also going to be donating one of their top of the line mattresses for the auction. I've got it's going to be something worthwhile. Easy to find tickets. Go to Facebook. Go to the Brothers in Blue Bash.
Brothers in Blue Bash.
And for the summit, go to our website, thewoundedblue.org.
Thewoundedblue.org.
Right. And if anybody has any questions, or if they want to become a sponsor of the event, contact me, Randy, at thewoundedblue.org.
What's the normal fee for the 3 days?
We're making it really inexpensive, $295.
Got it. So again, I want to help out anyone local.
Okay,
plus
write a
support
check.
us.
Write a check.
We'll write a check
right now.
I'm at the I'm at the Sticky Paws studio. It's very sticky here, so we're gonna have to get Sticky Paws studio to write the checks and make them the sponsor. Yeah, no, I definitely like to help out. Write a check as well. Do what I can do to basically help out. With the last few minutes in general, I know that you worked really hard, and I commend you for everything that you basically have done. Even though I was a cop for 17 years, I was thinking about you did 34, which is double the amount of my time. We've both been through 2 police academies, so you've done a lot in general. I'm trying to go, like I said, the weekly show. Trying to help people in the community, just paying it forward as a retired cop. It's something that I can do where I'm not in uniform and help people and get the word out in general. I know that your health recently was an issue. You look good every time I see you, and I know we frequent the same coffee pub place. You look good. You're always smiling in general. How are you feeling? I know how many weeks ago?
9 weeks ago, I suffered a quadruple bypass surgery.
Did you know it was coming too?
No, I had no idea. I had
home?
no idea. I did not have a heart attack. Now, keep in mind, I've survived more than 3 gunfights. Okay, I've survived a lot of different things. I survived that fire. I survived a lot of really hairy experiences, and I fully believe that I have an angel on my shoulder that's been with me for a long, long time. And I believe that angel was with me again. It was with me the night I had my stroke. And led me to this path that I'm on now. Mm-hmm. Things happen for a reason. I'm a believer in that, and I'm a believer that my little angel, however you want to call it, higher power entity, God, whatever you want to call it, exists, and that once again, I went in for a routine procedure. I had some tightness in my chest during exercise. I try to stay in shape, right? And just minor stuff. Well, the doctor put me through treadmill, all that other stuff. And I said, I know my body. There's something not quite right. So I thought I might have to have a stent, quite honestly. So they did a catheterization, which is where they put a scope in your wrist and goes up into your heart. And the doctor said, you're going to be dead in 2 to 3 days if we don't do a quadruple bypass right now. It was that severe. And it was not what I expected. Mm-hmm. It was the most painful experience of my life. Physically, it was horrendous. And, let me tell you, when they're about to give you that needle and put you out, and you know that might be the last vision that you see, it's a moment that you live with for the rest of your life, and it's a poignant moment. But I firmly believe that I survived that, just as I survived those shootings and the other things that I've survived, because I hadn't completed my mission yet. Mm-hmm. And that mission right now is the Wounded Blue, and that's how important it is.
Amazing. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I get to know you a little bit better in general, and I'm sure from here on we'll work together in general just to basically help the community and also officers throughout the U.S. because I definitely want to be more a part of that in general. Again, I want to thank Randy Sutton, 34 years of law enforcement, East Coast, West Coast. You've basically done it all, TV, movies, books. I'm not sure there's much more you can do in general, but you are helping.
I'm going to try and figure something else out. Have no fear.
You may be co-hosting here a little bit from time to time. We have. I actually would like to bring the sheriff on board as well to talk about just policing in general.
Well, let me give a plug to my show as well.
Go for it.
Because I do have a radio show. It's called Blue Lives Radio, the voice of American law enforcement. And it is on AmericaOutloud.com. Mm-hmm. It's a radio show. It's on iHeartRadio. It's been out for about 4 or 5 years. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, all those other things. Just look up Blue Lives Radio.
Lives Radio.
Voice of American Law Enforcement. And on Facebook, they can find me at the Voice of American Law Enforcement. And I would love to hear from your viewers and listeners.
Is it a weekly show?
It's a weekly show,
Weekly
yes.
radio show.
And it's also a podcast. So It's available 24/7.
Okay, great. So we'll pump it out. We'll tell people to go online to listen and to view it as well. Again, I'm David Kohlmeyer of The Problem Solver. Every single week, having amazing people like Randy Sutton here on the show. Again, we have the ProblemSolver.Vegas app, which is a progressive web app. You can add it to your home screen. Any problems that you have where you've been arrested, if you've been injured in an accident, if you need help, if you want to basically speak to a counselor, if you need housing, rental assistance, I mean, you name it, basically. We're trying to go above and beyond to basically help people and pay it forward. As retired police officers like myself and Randy, we're basically working to help the community and help people, mankind in general. So again, I'm Dave Kohlmeyer, the Problem Solver. Stay safe, and we will see you next week, and have a great day.